On this day, in 1949, the Metro Theatre in Brisbane was due to debut the new movie from famous director Jack Conway. Entitled Julia Misbehaves, the motion picture contained a number of Hollywood A-listers, including Greer Garson, Walter Pidgeon, Cesar Romero, Peter Lawford, Nigel Bruce, Henry Stevenson, and 16-year-old Elizabeth Taylor. Advertised as a romantic comedy not suitable for children, the film contained a scene in which Greer Garson took a bubble bath, which was quite a risque manoeuvre for its time. Hoping to drum up interest in the debut, the Metro Theatre manager, Ron Trimble, concocted an amazingly risque stunt. Approaching Mel Reid, a somewhat questionable local horse racing bookmaker and manager of Brightway's hardware store, Trimble discussed his idea and preparations began in earnest. 2 months earlier in April, the Theatre Royal on Elizabeth Street had run a vaudeville show entitled Nylons and Nonsense. One of the acts starred a red-headed burlesque performer who went by the stage name of Josette. During the week that Nylons and Nonsense ran, Josette performed a bubble bath striptease, slowly disrobing down to a sparkling G-string and piece of material strategically draped over her shoulders, whilst dancing behind a large bubble to the accompaniment of a vocalist singing "You're So Young and Beautiful." No doubt, having seen the act, the Metro Theatre's manager realised the potential in promoting Julia Misbehaves in June. Having secured a venue for his stunt through Mel Reid at Brightways, Trimble then contacted and secured Josette. It was now time to advertise his marketing spectacle. On the 9th of June, the Metro Theatre ran an advert in the Courier Mail, plugging the debut of Julia Misbehaves for the following day. However, a small box attached at the bottom of the advert likely raised eyebrows across Brisbane. Josette takes a bubble bath. At 12:30 p.m. tomorrow, glamorous stage star Josette will take a bubble bath in Brightway's Queen Street window opposite Players. A very similar advert was run the following morning, and the stage was finally set. At around midday, a crowd began to gather outside Brightway's hardware store in Queen Street. As the minutes ticked by, more onlookers gathered on the footpath. The two police officers who had been rostered on to keep an eye on the crowd quickly realised that reinforcements would be sorely required, and the call was made to Roma Street for backup. Within minutes, a dozen officers under the leadership of Inspector Slack arrived on the scene as the crowd continued to swell out across Queen Street and onto the opposite footpath. Vehicular and tram traffic running down Queen Street was brought to a standstill, causing havoc with lunchtime transportation. However, by 12:30, almost 800 onlookers had gathered, lining the footpaths for 100 metres either side of the storefront and across the road. Inside the surrounding buildings, people crowded around every available window space, looking out over the scene in the hopes of catching a glimpse of the day's spectacle. Finally, a curtain that obscured the front window of Brightway's hardware store was drawn aside, revealing Josette lounging in a large bathtub up to her chin in bubbles, and the crowd went berserk. Immediately, the thronging Queen Street surged forward against the window, pushing and pulling to get even the quickest glimpse of the burlesque star. Within seconds, the shop's window pane began to warp inwards under the weight of the crush, and the police contingent were left with no other option but to forcibly push the crowd back before the glass gave way. Within minutes of the curtain being drawn open, it was hastily drawn closed on the order of Inspector Slack, and the show was brought to a premature end. Despite a public announcement by Mel Reid that the show was unfortunately over, it took some time for the police to move the crowd along, and many stood by in the hopes of catching just one last tantalising glimpse of the bubble-clad Josette.